All right, hi everyone. So my name is Saya Apostle and I am the Vice Chair with the Marin Latino Leaders Board. And thank you everyone for being here today. We're definitely going to be speaking on very essential topics that are needed, especially now for our community, for our Latinx community. But before we start doing that, I do want to go over our statement of purpose and our elected officials. So before we start with our amazing speakers, I do want to let everyone know that Marin Latino Leaders was created to support and elevate the Latino voice in Marin County by recognizing leadership through networking opportunities that empowers the sharing of their challenges and successes. It is a platform to raise one voice for political, social, educational, and economic change for the enhancement of the Latino community. Marin Latino Leaders is committed to make this successful entity by featuring speakers that have succeeded in their careers and or have contributed to the community. And then one more thing, I do also want to acknowledge our elected officials, Micah Lawrence Gulati, which is trustee on the San Rafael City Council, City School Board, Jim Hugaboom, Superintendent of San Rafael City Schools, and Lori Fugali, which is the Marin District Attorney. And also the candidates for office, Micah Lawrence Gulati, Joe McGarry, running for Fairfax Town Council, Monty Schmidt, running for the Marin Municipal Water District Board Division 2, and Samantha Ramirez, running for San Rafael City School Trustee Area 1, and Micah running for San Rafael City School Counselor. Great, and with that being said, I do want to let Monica introduce our speakers for today. Go ahead, Monica.
All right, thanks, Saga. So I have the honor of introducing our speakers for today. And the first one up will be Marjorie Delgadillo. She is Manager of Community Partnerships and Communications at Marin Promise Partnership. Ms. Delgadillo is a multicultural professional as an unyielding advocate in her 22 years of service to the BIPOC youth of Marin County, particularly focusing on elevating the voice of undocumented foster youth. She has dedicated her professional career to uplifting the often marginalized lived experience of the many within our community. She spent 6 years working with youth as a health educator with Huckleberry Youth Programs and 4 years as a bilingual resource and referral specialist at Marin Child Care Council. In addition, she has been able to take her dedication to youth to the halls of Congress, assisting Congressmember Karen Bass to enact the first bipartisan foster care caucus within the U.S. House of Representatives. She has spent the last years consulting, providing cross-sector connections, contributing talent and passion to local nonprofits, as well as philanthropists to make an investment for a more equitable Marin. Thank you so much, Marjorie, for being here.
Gracias a ustedes. Muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody.
Sorry, I'm gonna just quickly introduce the other two, and then you can. Sorry about that. Okay, so next we have after Marjorie, we will have Melissa Diaz. Melissa Diaz is principal at Lynwood Elementary. Melissa Diaz has been the principal of Lynwood Elementary School in Novato since 2018. She began her career in education at Hamilton School in Novato as a teacher, where she taught multiple grade levels for many years before being named the English Language Learner Coordinator for the Novato Unified School District. Melissa grew up in Novato and is extremely proud to share that she is also a product of NUSD and considers it an honor to serve the Lynwood community as the school continues the transformation into a Spanish immersion school. She believes a collaborative school environment is key to creating successful teachers and students, and that partnerships with parents and community are essential to enriching the experience at Lynwood Elementary. Thank you, Melissa, so much for being here today. And last but not least, we will have Dr. Itoco Garcia, Superintendent of the Sausalito-Marin City School District. Dr. Garcia has been a transformative professional educator for 21 years in some of the most challenged schools in the Bay Area, and has dedicated his life and career to achieving educational equity for all students traditionally failed by our public school system. He spent 12 years as a teacher and instructional coach, and 6 years as a middle school and elementary school administrator in Oakland and Hayward. He spent the last 2 years as an educational consultant working across 8 school districts in California and Nevada, focused on the development of systems and structures to support school transformation, and focused on developing equity mindsets and heart sets among school and district administrators. Thank you, Dr. Itoco. We're so glad you could join us today. So I will now turn it over to Marjorie, who will begin the presentation. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you, Monica, for that wonderful introduction. Y muy buenas tardes, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. And again, many thanks to Marin Latino leaders for having me be on this panel. I want to start off this afternoon specifically with a video that will highlight some of the challenges, what our shared values are within Marin Promise Partnership, and how we are collaborating together to improve this process. Hugo, if you can please play the video, that'd be great.
Marin Promise Partnership, a cross-sector collective impact network of over 40 schools, nonprofits, businesses, and government agencies. Marin Promise Partners believe that every child in Marin can reach his or her full educational potential, regardless of race, ethnicity, or income. Many in our county share this belief. We have an abundance of effort and resources directed towards our 18 school districts, hundreds of individual PTAs, booster clubs, school foundations, nonprofits, and community organizations, all run by smart, dedicated, big-hearted people with deep compassion for our most vulnerable kids. Despite all of this effort, educational inequity in Marin has been a large and persistent problem. In fact, there are still about 7,000 children falling into the deepest equity gap in the state of California, all along 6 key developmental milestones from cradle to career. From kindergarten readiness to 3rd grade reading and 9th grade math, and from college readiness to enrollment and completion, about a third of Marin students are not reaching their full educational potential. Why don't our individual contributions add up to success for all kids? Why haven't our abundant resources closed this gap? The problem is not with our students, parents, teachers, administrators, counselors, mentors, funders, or nonprofit community leaders. The problem is that each of these groups operate in silos in which efforts are fragmented, disconnected, unaccountable to each other, and perhaps most importantly, a system that as a whole was not historically designed with equity in mind. That's why Marin Promise Partnership was formed, to close the educational equity gaps by 2028 through a systems approach with results at the center. How does Marin Promise Partnership do this? Well, as a partnership, we don't teach math, or tutor kids, or award scholarships, or provide any kind of direct service, because that's what the individual partners are already doing, and doing well. Instead, the program expertise of community partners is combined with the process know-how of backbone staff, so that together the partners can accomplish what none of them could do alone. Using the Strive Together collective impact framework, partners are aligning around a common vision, holding each other accountable, taking collective action, and advocating for equitable systemic change. Here's how it works. The Backbone team helps bring together the right people in the same room to align around a common vision under a proven cradle-to-career framework. Partners agree to share data and to hold each other accountable to collective goals and objectives. Action teams, guided by Backbone team facilitators, develop common strategies and take collective action, all the while measuring and continuously improving toward results. The Partnership Council and its Executive Committee advocate for systemic changes in practices and policies, all the while keeping equity at the center, knowing that some kids may need more assistance to achieve similar outcomes. This work is challenging, often uncomfortable, and always complex. But to close the equity gap once and for all, it must be done, and each and every partner is dedicated to making it happen. Help us keep our promise to our kids. Join the partnership, and together we can assure that every child in Marin can meet the educational milestones critical to achieving a bright and successful future.
Thank you. Thank you, Hugo. And so that was a short and brief informational video that really overviews what exactly Marin Promise Partnership is doing, how we're collectively impacting along with our partners and taking on racial equity as it particularly pertains to BIPOC students across Marin County. I'd like to take you now to our specific responses as to how we have been reaching out to community and how community has been reaching back to us at Marin Promise Partnership as we cover Rona, rebellion, COVID-19 responses across education. I'm going to share my screen now with you so that you can also take a look at our website. You will find this information on our website in our partners, pods, learning hubs, and distance learning supports. This was updated in early September. It really highlights, again, some of the responses that have come out of community. For example, beginning with Bank of Marin providing MCOE the support and the development of learning hubs based on the model of pop-up childcare centers. Childcare centers that were models with Marin Child Care Council. We also have the Marin Education Equity Fund. The Marin Education Equity Fund was a community-driven solution born out of the love and care of two mothers who really wanted to make sure to tackle racial equity and disparities for BIPOC students across Marin. We also have small cohorts and groups of children and youth who are participating in virtual early grade literacy pods. Marin Promise Partnership early grade literacy team is working on providing supplementary literacy pods for early readers at San Pedro, Bahia Vista, and Loma Verde. It's an exciting opportunity where we are, again, within our partnership, reaching out with parent services projects in the Canal area, as well as some students at Dominican University. And this Friday, we will actually be passing out teddy bears and books so that young children can cuddle with a book and participate in early grade literacy with their parents. There's also some great family lit tech support that's coming out of Parent Services Project, and again with Dominican University. There have been some wonderful workshops coming out of our partners from Canal Alliance, as well as MCOE that I want to highlight to you. And last but not least, our 10,000 Degrees Partnership and their amazing volunteer tutors of students that are doing one-on-one virtual tutoring for our students most in need across Marin County. So this is just some of the responses that you can find and gain more information. I'm steering you back to our website so that you can find out and read more in great detail for yourself. I also am bringing on this panel Cristina Saucedo from West Marin so that she can tell you herself what have been some of the community responses and some of the response from the Latino leaders out in Marin. Christina, can you kindly unmute yourself? And I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Marjorie. My name is Cristina Salcedo, and I'm a family advocate out here in Tomales Elementary School and Bodega Bay School. I work along with Angelica Sanchez. She's our family advocate at Tomales High School, and Glenda Mejia, who's our family advocate at West Marin School and Inverness School. And this year, we are working with our planning fall committee. This committee has everyone from our superintendent, our teachers, classified staff, and we are working really hard to make sure that we have everything ready to go so when we have a date to open school again. Right now, we currently have a transitional plan and a distance remote only plan for our students. And along with what Marjorie said, MCOE is supporting us to have a learning hub that we currently have here at Tomales Elementary School. We are using our family center as a hub for students that are in need of internet access, because that is a very, very hard thing to get out here because we're in such a rural area. I also have a note here from our principal, Norma Santorelli. This school year, we are doing distance learning, supporting our teachers with our online curriculum to use for instruction. We have been focusing on ensuring that all our students have devices, internet connectivity, also doing social emotional lessons in our school with our school counselor, and ensuring that we're creating relationships with their students. That's the most important that we want to focus on right now, since the school year has started very, very different. It hasn't been easy for our teachers or staff, but they're doing an amazing job with this new transition. And we are also focusing in attendance and engagement. That's something that's very important and that we're monitoring every day. So we are just making sure that we are getting everything ready in our classrooms, that everything is safe, so that when we have an opening day, we'll have our students back in school again. So thank you, Marjorie, and it's really great to be here with everyone. And again, we're working very hard with our family advocates and supporting our families and students at this time.
Muchísimas gracias, Cristina. And our students are so fortunate to have a wonderful family advocate like yourself out in West Marin. Gracias otra vez. I'd also like to point out that Marin Promise Partnership staff are working with Marin County Office of Education and the county to provide enrollment and attendance data support at the learning hubs for students who can't afford the private distance learning supports. And that today there are about 24 hubs that have started across our county. As you will notice, I've also shared our report card on racial opportunity gaps across Marin. You will notice the 6 Itos of kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade literacy, 8th grade math, college and career readiness, college and career program enrollment, and finally the completion of college and career programs. So here is my ask back to you, Marin Latino leaders, and all of us here who are gathered together this afternoon. I simply ask you to get involved. Would you like to partner with us? Join our partnership. Unidos somos más fuertes. I'd like you to, or encourage you to check out some of the upcoming school board candidate forums. Find out for yourself some of the propositions that are pertaining specifically to education that will affect all of our students, BIPOC or otherwise. And I'd also like you to be informed about an upcoming opportunity that will take place on October 14th. There is a webinar happening to be part of an upcoming great opportunity, the Leaders in Equity Opportunity, the LEO training that will be offered to, for the first time, young students as well as young professionals here in Marin County. And so really hoping to be able to partner with many of you to be able to offer this out to our young people. Thank you so much, and I will pass it over to my other panelists.
Awesome, Marjorie, thank you so much. That was a tough act to follow. You did a great job. So as I was introduced by Monica, my name is Melissa Diaz, and I am the extremely proud principal of Lynwood Elementary School here up in Novato Unified School District. I want to thank everyone for joining today, and I want to thank this leadership committee for asking me to do this. This is an honor, and I'm super grateful for that. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of folks who actually have supported me in my career, and so I'm very appreciative of that. My platform today, and I also want to preface in this conversation, is I would really like to create some dialogue around my platform today, and so I'd like to lessen my time presenting and open some time for Q&A at the end so that we really can move what I'd like to speak about forward. My platform today, through the lens of education, is really about the outside resources and the partnerships that we have in the community. I'd really like to focus on how we can strengthen our work as a community to really support our Latinx families. There are tons of partnerships that we have within NUSD with, for example, North Marin Community Services, Novato Police Department, the county. There are tons. And so I want to just say all of that is absolutely amazing, and our families are really benefiting from it. However, I do feel there is a need to strengthen that partnership and really open it up, especially right now during this time, this pandemic time, to have more dialogue and more communication as a community, as a county, on how we can bridge that gap and remove barriers for our families. So there's often language barriers, there's often other barriers, sometimes it's trust, sometimes what we're looking at is the amount of a form. For example, if I wanted to get a resource for myself, to going in and how much information is required by me, what do I need to present, how many other things, you know, and what does that look like? And what does that look like for our families? And that's a huge barrier. So I really wanted to focus on that and how we can support our families moving forward through this. And as I'd mentioned, there are tons of community partners out there already providing these great services, but I really want to emphasize that as I'm talking to families within my Lynwood community, one of the things I'm hearing is, yeah, I understand that there's this, I don't know really how to access it very well, or there's an issue with, I don't feel comfortable accessing the form online, or all the information that they're asking me to submit, I don't feel comfortable with that. And so in NUSD, and I think like a lot of the school districts throughout Marin County, we do have a community liaison that plays a very heavy and impactful role in supporting this. And so what I'd like to do is have that that dialogue as a community and have it more often. I know everyone's very busy, but I think this is a really important point, and I'm very passionate about this particular platform. There's a lot of things at a school and within a school district that we can support. It's a lot easier, obviously, if we have students present and coming to school and helping. We can help them with their social and emotional needs, making sure that they have food. So within our school, we're able to provide that in certain ways. We're able to provide a free meal service here on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. We do have some counselors that are able to connect virtually. So we have that capacity, but we need to do more. And we can always say that, right? But especially now, we need to provide more, we need to do more. And what is the outreach going to continue to look like as we navigate through this as a community of leaders? And how can we really help support our Latinx families? Because I'm here every day at school, and the majority of my school community is literally right behind us. And I see and I feel the need. I'm gonna get a little emotional here. I feel the need on a daily basis. And so whatever we can do to extend that and really help bridge that gap and remove those barriers for our families, it's something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done outside of a pandemic, but it now needs to be done even more. So I thank you for your time. Again, you know, I could talk on and get passionate and get emotional because I strongly believe in all of this. But I really do want to create that space to have this dialogue where folks can say, okay, well, what if we try this, or what if we try that? So I thank you so much for your time. The other thing is I'm always open to email if anybody has any suggestions or has anything outside of it. You know, we have a different, Novato's community is different than the other, you know, towns and cities within Marin County. Just geographically, we're spread out in a different way. And so just acknowledging that as well. Our Latinx community is dispersed throughout Novato. And so just thinking about that as well and how we can meet needs of students. And we're fortunate to have, you know, different things through North Marin Community Services, through our SRO program with Novato PD, through North Bay Security, where we can help navigate and access families and give them access as needed, but we still need to do more. So thank you so much, and I look forward to having great dialogue with you at the end of this.
Thank you, Melissa and Marjorie. Gracias. Es un honor estar presente aquí con ustedes. Gracias por invitarme. One thing that I neglected to add in my bio, and thank you for the introduction, is that like the other panelists here, I too grew up in Marin County. A little older, Tam High class of 92. And I too see some familiar faces that, you know, I've worked with in different manifestations growing up around here, or I've been supportive since my return. There's a few things that I think I want to lift up in terms of the Marin City perspective, the Sausalito perspective, the Southern Marin perspective in general. First, we like to think of ourselves in Marin County as very separate communities. And in many senses, we are. But as a barrio Latino, somos muy conectados. And, you know, Marin City is the historically Black community in Marin County, and still, I think, is a small majority. But Marin City is also now a very Latino community. When I went to Tam High, I was one of 10 Latinos. I think there's like almost 200 at Tam these days. And encima de eso, a lot of our families work in the community, but live in San Rafael, or live in Novato, or live in San Pablo, or live in Richmond. And I think one thing that we can do to really improve outcomes for our familias is to start to operate as if we are a connected community. Some of you may be aware that we have opened in-person school. We are now on our 13th day of in-person school for all students. The reason that we did that is because our parent community, which is about 65% Black and about 30% Latino, or Latinx, as folks are saying these days, communicated to us very clearly several things in a round of surveys and town halls. One, many of our families need an in-person option so that they can either retain or regain employment. We are not serving a community that has jobs that it's easy to work remotely from home, or we already have a nanny to watch the kids, right? And so many of our families need school to keep a roof over their heads, to keep food in their mouths, and to keep clothes on their backs. And so we have a small school here, Bayside MLK. We have about 115 students enrolled. And currently we have 102 students showing up every day for in-person instruction. So only 12 kids opted to remain in distance learning. That's how much of a need this community has for in-person school. We did get a health waiver approved by the county and the state. And I'm happy to share operational protocols with any school that is interested in how we're doing it. We saw early in the global pandemic that we needed to remain operational as a school district. My executive cabinet and I have come to work in person every day since the shutdown, and continue to meet to figure out, first of all, how to deliver service in these unprecedented conditions, and then how to make it better. We started a mobile food pantry that, in partnership with SF Marin Food Bank. We have that every Wednesday, and the numbers have not dropped off at all from the summer. We supported a mask drive with some other local nonprofit organizations because we noticed early in the pandemic that people were running around all over Marin City without masks. And we just decided that that is another area that we could work. We got distance learning up and running, and then quickly realized that, like for many things in school, it was working for about 80% of our kids. And for about 20% of our kids, it really wasn't working at all. So we developed what we are calling a distance learning multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1 is just our distance learning platform: Zoom, Google Classroom, Lexia, iLit, Dreambox, a few other online learning programs, and support from paraeducators and teachers. Tier 2 consists of a program that provides a one-to-one mentor with each student that wasn't engaging fully with distance learning. They do a morning wake-up call and goal setting with each student. And then they do an afternoon checkout call where they review the students' daily goals, see if they got all their work done, and then if they didn't, provide some one-on-one tutoring to make sure that students could complete those assignments. We saw engagement increase significantly in that 20%, but we still had 5 to 10% of kids, even with that level of support, that were not engaging with distance learning. And so we created an in-person distance learning support option that was staffed by our classified union. We actually had kids come and do distance learning under the supervision of staff. From that experience, we learned protocols that, safety protocols that allowed us, and we worked very closely with the public health department. Definitely shout out to Dr. Willis and Dr. Santora. They are incredibly responsive and a really important partner in figuring out how to help us do this safely for students and staff and the community. But we actually ran summer program for about 80 kids in between our summer bridge program for TK students, our extended school year program for students with IEPs, and then we partnered with the Hannah Project to run Freedom School for another 60 or so kids daily. And, you know, so from those experiences, we felt confident in our protocols to run in-person school, and knock on wood, we're on day 13 and we have had no transmissions thus far. I think some of the other things that really came up, other than offering an in-person option for our students, was the issue of food insecurity and distance learning that I sort of already addressed, and some of the other touch points that the other panelists mentioned about digital literacy and access. The reality is we need parent classes to help our Latino parents understand how to access, log in, navigate different technological platforms. We are a full service community school here in the Sausalito-Marin City School District. And one of the other things that we did was move our community school online. So we developed a platform called the Marin City Cooperation Teams. There's a website, you can check it out. It's marincitycooperationteams.net. We have 7 different teams: a seniors team, infant and young children team, a college student team, a food team, a crisis team, a housing team, an academic team. And people can go on the website and just request assistance in a pretty easy form. Our response time is averaging about 45 minutes to get people connected with what they need, really almost whatever they ask for. I've seen people ask for housing, food, clothes, you know, academic support, you name it. And what we've done is really create a community-wide system of partnerships here in Southern Marin with a bunch of different nonprofit organizations, government organizations, and just individual people that wanted to reach out and volunteer. And that's how we're able to get such a fast response time. We would love to partner with the San Rafael community and the Novato community to expand the reach of MCCT. We're about to launch a mobile app so people they can just access it from their phones. And those are a few examples of how we have responded to this crisis and met the specific needs of our families. We're also still doing a lot of home visits. I know it might sound crazy, but we are confident that masked and socially distanced, that it is safe to visit homes and check up on students and families that are not engaging with distance learning and see what kind of support they need. And so as much as we've relied on survey data, we are really relying also a lot on that qualitative data and the conversations that we have when we do home visits. We do have bilingual mentors to help our Spanish-speaking students and families. But I think that this is an area where we could really collaborate countywide. The other area that we're seeing that isn't just a Latino issue, but definitely has some intersectionality, with our identity is the engagement of students with special ed over distance learning, particularly special ed students that are English language learners. And, I know that different school systems have different constraints in terms of size, in terms of funding, but I really want to offer all of the listeners on this call to support all of your local schools to figure out how to open in-person options, particularly for students with IEPs and English language learners. Distance learning is hard. I have 3 kids. I have a almost 21-month-old son. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old daughter. And it is not easy to support kids at home by any stretch of the imagination. I think most parents would agree that it takes between 3 and 5 hours a day of supporting their students to be fully engaged with distance learning. And the reality is, for much of our community, we simply, as much as we would love to do that, don't have that time available. And so I think if we could get a countywide system of bilingual mentors that are available to support distance learning, along with some parent education classes around how to navigate the different digital platforms and improve digital literacy, as well as Wi-Fi access and computers. We're very blessed with resources in our district. We do have a 1-to-1 computer ratio for students. And through our partnership with the Marin City Free Library, we were able to get hotspots for all of our families that didn't have connectivity. But that's not true for everyone in this county. That's not true for everyone in West Marin. It's not true for everyone in points between Novato and here. And so I just want to invite everybody to really lean in and think about how we can collaborate to make sure that those types of opportunities are available to all of our familias. And I'll stop talking because, like Melissa, I could go on for days.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marjorie, Dr. Itoco, and Melissa. There were so many components that you all brought up that, looking at the chat and questions coming towards me, that really resonate and want to know more about. And so, with no particular order, we're not going to open up the questions. So if you all have questions, feel free to use the raise hand function under participants, and that will prompt me to help, address who to ask a question in public, or you're more than happy to type it into the chat. There were components that everybody kind of touched on regarding parents and parent engagement, especialmente for the Latino families, ¿verdad? So some of the questions that came up were, how do you support Latino families, Latinx families struggling with online learning and that language barrier, but also how do you connect with them in a way for them to stay engaged when we already know it's hard for them to do that, given the pandemic or not. So if anybody wants to jump in and kind of start the conversation.
Great. Hugo, I'll jump in. Thank you so much for bringing this up. So one of the things that Marin Promise Partnership is launching is our Youth, Student, and Family Council. What this means is that we will be gathering every quarter where we will have voice and a variety of voices. I want youth from the Youth Commission. I'm looking for transitional age youth, former foster youth, youth from different and families from different religious sectors to join us as we launch this Youth, Student, and Family Council. What we hope to do is elevate the voice, and not only elevate the voice, the lived experience, but also allow for them to be able to be change makers and affect policy. So that if, let's say, I see Mr. Jim Hogaboom here, and for an example, if we had parents from Novato, San Rafael, West Marin, and there was an interest in getting undocumented parents to be able to vote for the school board, but they are residents of San Rafael. Could we all come together and make that happen? If this is something that is of interest from the Student, Youth, and Family Council themselves, they would be able to ask this of our partnership council or our leadership team. And similarly, our partnership council, our leadership team would be able then to vet their policies. Hey, listen, are these family tech lit workshops working in the evening? Would it be better to do it on a Saturday? Should we have bilingual, simultaneously translation happening during these? Things like that. Those are going to be some of the ways that we will be effectively working with BIPOC students and families of color, because as we know, the Latinos in this county, particularly the students, have a huge education equity gaps, and we need to work together, juntos, in order to solve this, porque unidos, el pueblo jamás será vencido.
No, thank you, Marjorie. Melissa, Dr. Itoco, would you like to share your input?
Go ahead, Melissa.
I was going to say, go ahead. I think both of us love this you know, opportunity to, because we're all passionate about this. Obviously, you're passionate because you're here today watching this and participating. And so I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat, and I think the online learning and the language barriers is definitely a huge concern across the board. I think as a district here in Novato and like other districts, we're struggling to meet needs. Connectivity has been taken care of. All of our kiddos essentially have devices. I think the larger issue is the parent trainings, and so that they feel comfortable helping their students navigate. You know, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to be on a Zoom in general, and so that's something I really want folks to consider. Just all these participants that are sitting in front of me today, I look at these beautiful faces and I think, wow, this is amazing because all these people are coming together, but it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me as a speaker. But think about that as far as our families go, right? That don't feel necessarily comfortable saying anything or asking a question in this type of platform. And so, or even trying to get onto the Zoom, right? We're doing some parent meetings here at Lynwood. We did one each week for the month of September, so parents could come. We had translation available. But parents, even if we only have, 20 or 15 folks at the parent meeting or at a training, they're still very hesitant to speak up and ask questions, and even if there's a translator. And so just really remembering that and how we can, walk alongside of our families to support that and that learning, and what we can do from the site level, what we can do from the external community resources, etc. It's just really something that I want to highlight and make sure that we are recognizing, and then also just commending our families and commending our students and our staff and our teachers for, hey, great job getting on the Zoom, because that's a completely different thing for all of us. And, I'm feeling more comfortable because I'm doing this multiple times a day. I'm sure you folks are as well, but that's not the same scenario for our families. Our teachers are slowly getting comfortable and our students are getting more comfortable, but just acknowledging that and commending where necessary and whenever possible, I think I want to support that.
Yeah, I would agree, Melissa, just to kind of piggyback on some of the things you're saying. I think, engaging our families has traditionally been a challenge, and it is not easier now. It's definitely easier for people. I'm getting some amazing meeting attendance because we're able to do things over Zoom and people don't have to be physically present, but not from our Latino families. And so I think that, what we had to do when we had our school reopening town hall. I did a Spanish version, but we still had to make basically personal phone calls to all of our families from our DLAC. They reached out personally, different officers in our DLAC reached out personally to 3 or 5 families, which, you know, allows us to cover all the families in our school. But we can't rely on just an email and a text. People really need a personal connection. If you can't do home visits, then a personal phone call is really important. And whether it's about a school reopening town hall or a safety plan or, you know, a parent education class, I think that is the kind of outreach that we really, really need. I noticed a question on the chat about the Wi-Fi, and I'll defer to somebody else, you know, but I have been part of those calls because we are actually going to create a network here in Marin City as well. And so I think it's important to understand some of the technical components of what goes into creating a Wi-Fi network and why, you know, maybe it's not the strongest signal in all places, or there aren't more hotspots available yet in San Rafael. There's a few major issues. One is where there are public buildings like county buildings or school buildings or public safety buildings. That's where Wi-Fi hotspots went up first. The rollout onto PG&E light poles is going to take a little bit longer. The permissions there, it's going to happen in the canal, and that's going to greatly create increased access for folks in that community. But also, all of you may have experienced, depending upon what kind of house you live in, like Wi-Fi is not a perfect internet connectivity option. It doesn't travel well through certain kinds of building materials. It doesn't travel well through over long distances at all. And so one of the problems that we're looking at here in Marin City is in the high-rise buildings in Golden Gate Village. You know, those are 1960s era poured concrete. They're three foot thick walls in the interior of those buildings. Well, guess what? Wi-Fi doesn't penetrate 3 feet of concrete. And so we're having to look at multiple options to create access for the entire community in terms of internet connectivity. And I think everyone that has an interest on this call, there is certainly a wide open effort and a commitment from the county government, from the County Board of Supervisors, and from Marin Community Foundation. But I think an increased amount of voices advocating for speed and reach will help the project in both communities, and perhaps in areas like West Marin or some other areas of Novato that don't have great connectivity for many of our families. You know, there's a wonderful article by Gloria Ladson Billings called The Education Debt, and it talks about how for decades we disinvested in education, particularly in communities of color. And I think that Marin County, the second wealthiest county in the United States of America, really, this is something that we owe our students and families that don't have regular and reliable connectivity. And if we continue to advocate together, I think we can see this effort countywide.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, that response. Monica Cañas, you have a question, feel free to ask.
Yes, thank you. So my question is more focused, you know, in the West Marin area. So I don't know if Marjorie or your partner Maria or Christina might want to address the question. But it's something that did come up, and it's something that came up in the chat. And then me, you know, being involved in my school district, and I also agree that it isn't enough to just simply send an email or just, you know, a post online somewhere. I can't tell you how many families in our district, you know, even after our superintendent sends out hundreds of emails, they're still very uninformed. So my question is, just given, you know, the geographic, you know, location of West Marin, and it's all spread out, we have rural areas where I'm sure a lot of families have a lot of trouble with, you know, internet connection. what is the West Marin School District, I think it's called Shoreline Unified School District, doing to reach out to these families that live out like in the farms and the ranchos, you know, and don't have any type of connection?
Sí, claro. Le voy a pasar el micrófono a mi colega María. María, if you would like to speak up on what is happening in West Marin, particularly as to how we reach out to families.
Well, I primero quiero decir gracias, but I also want to really say that the women doing the work out there, connecting families, translating every little bit of information, connecting, going to homes, opening up space for learning hubs, looking for internet options, doing the labor and the work are the family advocates. And we have two family advocates here today with us. We have Angelica Sanchez from Tamales High School, and we also have Cristina, who you got to hear from Tamales Elementary School. And I'm not sure if Angelica or Cristina, you would like to talk about your work, really trying to reach and connect with families, despite all the barriers.
We definitely are calling out to our families. We are in contact with them, not only through phone calls, but meeting them with distance, with safe distance, and just everything that we need to do to be safe. So we do it by appointment. We are meeting them in places at times. We're also doing texting. That's very, very, we do that on a daily basis. Everything from them having an issue to connect, or how do we use the Seesaw application? How do we get into my child's email address? So we're doing a lot of that, and we're actually hosting our first ELAC meeting tonight. And we're doing it as a district-wide ELAC. So along with Angelica and Glenda, we'll be doing that tonight, and we're looking forward to it. We've been sending the link through a text message for our parents to remind them. And we've also noticed that we have received more participation now that everyone's home and safe. We've noticed that before it was harder to get our parents to come out into the school again because we're so far away. And now they can do it from their home. And so just staying connected, again, it's on a daily basis. It's at all hours of the day. Sometimes we're getting calls or text messages at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And so it's quite the challenge, but it's good to have that connection, with them. It feels really good to know that they trust us and they know that we're there to help. Angelica, do you have anything to add?
No, just that I agree with you. It's just a lot of phone calls, texting, Google Voice, and just trying to connect with them and them reaching out to you. It's just hard here because everyone's so separated, and that's the only way they can communicate with us easier.
I would like to also say, as an unincorporated area of Marin County, there is not any sort of government infrastructure outside from our supervisor and our schools. And so the schools become the hub of community life for much of West Marin, and the shoreline, the entirety of West Marin covers the same amount of space as LA Unified, of course, with far less of a population, but the difference between Christina's work and Glenda's work, it's a 25-minute drive to get to each other, and some of the families are even 30 minutes in different directions on dirt roads. It also, Shoreline Unified also straddles both Sonoma and Marin counties, and so it absolutely makes getting services and resources complicated for families. And so I just want to acknowledge the incredible work of both Angelica and Cristina to try to navigate a system that wasn't built to support families, really was not. And so they're doing incredible work with very small budgets, but with a lot of corazón. So thank you.
No, I appreciate the question and also highlighting West Marin. West Marin is very special to me for many reasons. For those who know me, And this actually brought up a couple pieces. And Maria, you also asked earlier, how do we connect best practices and distance learning for Latino families to support all schools in the district? And it's very well known, Marin County is huge. Marin County is all over the place and everybody's working with the resources they have. So we'll love to hear from the panelists really around, what are your practices right now? What are you sharing? What also can work and do more of?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of chime in there and on the safety question. One of the things that we're encouraging our teachers to do is to really reach out regularly to parents. And if we don't get a response, then we turn on our community school outreach team and we go and we do those home visits and say, hey, just, is there anything you need? How can we support you? Is everything okay? We noticed, that you're not logging in or, you're not turning in assignments. These are some of the things that we have available. And if you don't need us, great. And if you do, here we are. And usually what we find is, people didn't go to the website. People missed the email. We can't rely on sending home newsletters as much as we could. I mean, we can because we're in person, but the kids that aren't coming in person, you're not sending home a newsletter with them. So there really needs to be an additional layer of outreach in terms of safety. And I want to stress again, I think, one of the advocacy points here is that we need to fund education, like not just at a county level, but at a state level. The state of California, I think, is currently 45th or 47th in educational funding. When I went to Marin County Public Schools in the 80s, we were #1 in the country. And it is inexcusable for a state that has the 6th largest GDP in the world to, sorry,
Good afternoon, friends. This is
I'm out of school, hold on.
Not any worries at all. These are educators. This is what they do. This is what it's all about. So thank you.
Yeah, a little hazard of being a small district. Our district office is in our school upstairs. If you ever want to come see me, we're on the 2nd floor, room 201. But as I was saying, the Sausalito-Marin City School District is also an unincorporated Marin County, and has some similar challenges with West Marin. One of the differences, well, actually it's not different, but the difference is we have the Sausalito tax base that contributes to our district revenue, right? So we're a basic aid school district. We're not an LCFF school district like our friends in Novato or our friends in San Rafael. And so we have resources available, and those resources really are the primary reason that I can open in-person school. My trustees passed a budget in June that allowed me to staff at a 13-to-1 student to teacher ratio. That's good for many reasons educationally, but it also happens to be one of the ways that we're keeping people safe. That means I can guarantee 6 feet of space in each classroom between desks, between teachers and students. The MOU with our teachers, who were the first teachers in the county to agree to come back to in-person learning, requires masks for all students and all staff, sanitation stations, one-way directional movement in hallways and in breezeways. We have 5 separate entrances with staggered arrival and dismissal time for each cohort of students. Each cohort has their own dedicated bathroom. Each cohort has their own dedicated recess time.
I'm back.
I got muted by the host, sorry about that. Each cohort has their own dedicated bathrooms, their own dedicated recess times, their own, we have no more than 2 cohorts outside at lunch, and they're separated by at least 30 feet of distance. But we do food delivery directly to the classroom. But all of these things are possible because we're well-resourced and because we have small a small student population. And until we properly resource all of our school districts in our state, but for the purpose of this conversation in our county, at levels that allow similar things, I don't think parents and staff are going to feel safe coming back to school. And so I think that's a big push for this group.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Itoco. Melissa, Margie, would love for you all to get an opportunity to also kind of highlight a couple pieces of, best practices, what is happening, what are we doing, and what can we do more of?
Melissa, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just want to echo some of the things I'm hearing, things that are happening down with Dr. Garcia, things that are happening in West Marin, and things that we continue to try to do, I think, throughout Marin County in general. But it's really important to understand that level of trust. And I had mentioned it earlier, but when you're making a personal phone call or you're knocking on a door doing a home visit to check in, how are you doing? It really sets a tone for everything for our families. And I just want to acknowledge that. The Latino community is very familial, right? It's, hey, my cuñado is going to help me with this, or my tío is going to help me with that. And we need to structure, I believe we need to structure our community in a similar way, that we're all helping each other. And so however and whatever that looks like is really important. What I'd like to do from today's conversation is really try to encourage a group of us to get together, whether it be all around the county or just in Novato and maybe in San Rafael, and have representatives, whatever that looks like. I really want to start encouraging that so that we can be more familial and come together as a community to support our kiddos. So whatever that might look like, maybe I'll talk to Hugo about that and try to get that going with your mailing list and whoever might be interested. The other side of it, and I'm just responding to the safety components, I know that is a huge thought in everyone's mind. How are we ensuring that everyone returning to site is safe? So very similar to what you're hearing, all of the school districts are required to produce a document to present to the county. It's the SSSPP. You're going to start hearing a lot more about that and seeing that. And it's basically a 30-point document that shows everyone, okay, this is what we're doing. These are the points that we're doing to ensure that the return is safe. One thing I want to mention that I think is very, very crucial is that we need to ensure that that document is well translated and well communicated to our community. Because if it is not, that's a high level of concern for me and should be for everyone in the county, right? That is something that really needs to be explained, and our families feel safe. Some of the things that we're talking about is creating bilingual videos and messages for our families for easier access. They're not having to necessarily read a 30-point document. I mean, between you and me, that's a lot of reading, right? I'm creating the document. I know how much is in there. So creating a video that lets our families know, bilingual messages, hey, this is what we're gonna do for return. Walk around, show the campus, show the things that we've done prior to anyone coming on site. Here's the expectation from families. Here's the expectation from students. Here's the expectation from staff. Having this messaging, that familial feeling, they know because it's coming from someone that they trust, me, right? They trust me. They send their kids to me every day, all day. So that I think is really important. And however we can support that as a larger community, I just want to put that out there. I think that's something to really consider and think about.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I think that's a really important point as well. One of the things that we did, I get to provide my own translation services, as many of you do, but it would be wonderful to see some support from the county or local philanthropy on that, because it does cost money and it does take time. But I did a town hall in Spanish, and then did a Facebook Live broadcast. So it's there available. It's there available for anybody to look in posterity. And that seemed to be really successful for a lot of our Spanish speaking families. It helped a lot of people feel comfortable coming back to school.
Marjorie, do you want to chime in around best practices?
Sure. I put it in the chat. I linked back to our website, highlighting some of the precautions that were lifted from the state. Also echoing Melissa's statement with the 30-point plan and highlighting one of our partners, MCOE, Marin County Office of Education. They are linked on that article so that they also have videos on their website, and they will take you through a classroom, what that looks like. They walk you onto the campus. So that's something that we have shared on our website, and then put the spotlight back to our partners so that they can have some traffic and have video content as well. And then I'm proposing this question similarly to Maria's question back to the group, which is specifically because we are asking too, we're asking our partners, we're asking our community, ¿qué es lo que ustedes necesitan de nosotros? What would be the thing para que ustedes se sientan confortables para regresar a la escuela? What would be the feedback that you could give us? The community has the solution, and we truly believe that. And so I'd love to hear from our participants too, what would be that threshold to feel comfortable, or how can we best support you while you're learning and providing distance learning at home? Time all in at once.
No, thank you, Marjorie. You actually took the question right from my notes, and we'll love to hear from you, Melissa and Dr. Itoco, really that call to action, right? What is it that you all need from the community? We have different variety of people in our call today that we want to appreciate from the private, public, and nonprofit sector. And so, yes, what is that call to action? How can we lean in to support the Latino communities in your regions?
I think bilingual mentors, translation services, support in both creating digital literacy, parent education classes, and then engaging the community in attending. We can't forget the abuelitas too. Like a lot of times our kids, are at home with abuelita, and there's an even greater kind of digital divide there. So, we need outreach on multiple levels. And again, just a shameless plug for, across community collaboration on these things. Like if Novato's developing something great, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I just need my parents to be able to have access to it, or to be able to run the same play down here on a different date at a different time. If San Rafael's doing some amazing things, like let's really collaborate and pool our resources. One of the things I would love to see is a countywide family engagement network. I was part of launching the Alameda County FEN. When we started, I was the only principal in the room, and it's really a dual capacity building framework based on the work of Karen Mapp from Harvard, where community outreach and engagement staff from school districts can build their capacity with best practices, with research practices on how to effectively engage the community. But parents can also get an education on how to interact and navigate school and governmental systems as well. And I think that's a huge area where we could all collaborate, and where many folks on this call could support us with time and energy and resources. There's a framework actually I put forward for a family engagement network that initially spans Sausalito-Marin City, San Rafael, Novato, and Shoreline as a way to kind of launch the work. And so happy to share that with anyone who's interested.
So I think for us and from my perspective, I'm going to find the silver lining in everything. That's my new mantra, right? The silver lining is I had never been on a Zoom prior to this, but this Zoom is bringing all of us together. And so I really want to continue this. This is amazing. and this, at least the structure of whoever might be interested to continue this. And I'm seeing a lot of that going up into the chat right now, which I think is awesome. So however we can support that. The other thing I want to mention is there was some talk about basic aid versus like an LCFF. And so Novato is different, Santa Fe is different. And just, I think putting that out there and understanding the differences and how we're funded versus how other districts are funded. We are not basic aid, and what that looks like and how much money we're getting allocated to us. And do I believe that education reform and budgeting needs to change? Yes. I guess I'm concerned about the time frame and allowance of how long that typically will take. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be something that we're fighting for, but what can we do now together to really support and move forward? So I appreciate highlighting that and making that known to the larger community so that there is that understanding. Because like we've said many times, we're all in the same county, but it's not the same. And that's where the equity or the inequities come into play and where the shortfalls are showing and the barriers, et cetera. So there's many things, even outside of the pandemic, that we need to be fighting for, but now even more.
Now that is fantastic. Thank you both for that answer. As everybody can see, there are resources being added to the chat. Feel free, if you have a resource, to also add it on here. Great for that community sharing. Pepe Gonzalez, you have a question. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
It was more adding on to their point, and I want to thank Melissa and Dr. Itoco Garcia. They got an email from me a couple weeks ago, and here they are rocking it in front of everybody. So I guess the one point that we're doing the best we can to problem solve and create all these amazing town halls and different forms of communicate with families. I think the one thing that I would push this group to also consider is we're starting to see the lack of bilingual staff in our school system in the certificated and administrative ranks. So pushing this question to you guys now is, what are you guys doing, or what can we do? Because right now we're problem solving and we're getting through this. What's the outcome going to be, or what do we need to do to get more teachers of color that are bilingual, bicultural into our schools? And are you guys doing anything around that?
Muy buena pregunta. So one of the things that I started when I got here was a teacher of color pipeline. It's morphed into what we're calling CREED, or Culturally Responsive Educator Equity Development. For those of you that don't know, I spent 5 years as the principal of Cherryland in southern Alameda County. It's in the Hayward Unified School District, but it's actually in unincorporated Alameda County. And como San Rafael es el mero barrio, digamos. And, you know, when I walked on campus, I had 35 teachers, 80% Latino students, 63% ELL, and I had 5 teachers of color. And I was like, yo, I cannot lead a school this way, right? This is not an authentic education for our familias. And so I reached out to a couple different teacher credential programs and was able to create a pipeline at Cherryland. So when I left after 5 years, we had 17 teachers of color. This is a K-6 late exit bilingual school. So 2 bilingual classes per grade level, TK through 6th grade. And really finding bilingual teachers was like a cage match with the other bilingual principals in the district every year. And I finally was just like, you know what? I ain't in it. Our HR department recruits 9 bilingual teachers for 27 openings every year. You guys fight over those 9. I'm going to just create my own pipeline. And we did. And so I saw something very similar here when I got here. And I was like, man, what am I going to do? And I was like, yo, I'm going to recreate this pipeline. Maybe it'll be easier as a superintendent than, you know, it was as a principal, since I don't have to manage the day-to-day operations of a school. And so we have partnerships with UC Berkeley, USF, SF State, Dominican, University of the Redlands. Those are in the works, and that's actually a collaboration with Marin Promise Partnership. We agreed through the MEEI initiative that for the first 2 years it would be a pilot, because I really needed to make sure that I was staffing my school district before getting into the huge amount of teacher needed in San Rafael and Novato. We can't compete, right? But there's 3 pathways. One is a grow your own pathway that creates a pathway for students to go through high school and then get a BA and a teacher credential and come back and teach in our district. The second pathway is helping our classified staff get into credentialing programs. And I'm really happy to say, of the 5 teachers that I was able to hire this school year, 3 of them were women of color. 2 were longtime, what we call student success coaches or paraeducators in our district, and 1 was another community member. And then the third, Rama, digamos, is getting placement directly from our credential partners, either on an intern basis or when folks graduate from those programs. And so they did a great job, like, sharing our job openings. I had 57 applications for 5 teaching positions, which is really unprecedented in this district. And that pipeline and that framework will go live countywide for the next school year. That's the agreement we made, and I'm happy to support, all of you in that way. And
that would be amazing.
Because we're trying to start a dual language school year.
I know, I can tell you're coming after me on that. I'm just going to echo what he's saying. We are a Spanish immersion program, so trying to get bilingual staff is beyond cage match at this point, because all of my teachers essentially will eventually need to be at that point and that level. I'm happy to report that 75% of Lynwood staff is bilingual. All of our office staff is bilingual, which I can't even tell you is an absolute amazing, talk about the familial and the trust component. It's absolutely amazing, and I feel blessed and honored to have them up front representing our school. It's very difficult. It is part of our Novato Unified equity imperative to ensure that we have highly qualified bilingual staff and teachers, certificated especially. But it is a struggle. Our human resources goes out to the same partnerships through Sonoma State, Dominican, et cetera, all of the credentialing programs in the surrounding area. And then very similar to Dr. Garcia, I think we create our own, right? We're advocates for our site and we want the best of the best. So we create our own pathways or our own relationships with different programs, and the networking never ends, right? So.
Yeah, and similarly, with what Dr. Garcia said, we at Marin Promise Partnership do have that Marin Educators for Equity Initiative, MEEI, continuing the work from Marin Educators Alliance and E3. The goal of the initiative is to increase the number of teachers, mentors, and administrators of color throughout Marin, to provide the cradle to career support. So this is something that we continue to do with, in partnership with Dr. G, and hopefully as we expand partnership. En el futuro, bienvenida, Melissa, to the partnership.
No, we want to first and foremost thank everybody for joining us, staying the whole time, right? We are busy. Our event will end at 1:30 as promised. And we have one last question. And from there, after the question, panelists, we ask for your final remarks, whatever they may be, the call to action, the reminders. And our guests, if you have resources, please continue to add them to the chat. We will do our best to share that out with a follow-up email. Monica Cañas, feel free to ask your question.
All right, so whoever wants to answer this question. So in my district, Larkspur, Corte Madera, we do also have a shortage of teachers of color. And so this is a question that I've posed before to the, district administration, like, why are we not hiring more teachers of color? And they're, one of the principals was like, well, they're just not applying. And then I said, well, why do you think they're not applying? And she said, well, the cost of living is just expensive, to live here and to afford a place. And so I know that one of the solutions around that some school districts are talking about and doing are partnering up with other agencies to be able to establish affordable housing complexes just for, I think, essential workers or just teachers. I'm not exactly sure. Is that something that your district has been discussing, district-wide, county-wide, and what are some of the efforts?
Yeah, 2 things on that. Our partnership with the University of Redlands potentially can provide interim teacher housing. even if people are not enrolled in their program. You know, they have that big, beautiful campus in San Anselmo, which was the San Francisco Theological Seminary, I think, when I was growing up, some church organization. But it's ginormous and it's empty, and there's a bunch of dormitories there. And so we're in discussion with them. They might be open to providing teacher housing, even if people are not in their credentialing program. So that's a short-term option. We do have a school construction bond on the ballot for this November the 3rd. It is Measure P. And Measure P does include staff housing as a potential project in the bond. And lastly, you know, and I want to invite all the educators of color on here to kind of chime in with their experience to your question, Monica. But you, much like our families, you need to do additional outreach to Black and Brown educators. We're not going to just necessarily respond to an EdJoin post, particularly if we view Marin County as a overwhelmingly white, unwelcoming space, right? Like, even at Cherryland, I had to do a bunch of outreach. Here, we have to do a bunch of outreach. You have to really court people, educators of color. We're a hot commodity. We could go work anywhere in the state. So you have to help people understand why Marin, why San Rafael, why Novato, why Marin City? Like, what is the need and what is the opportunity to have an impact on the community that you have joined this profession to impact? And I think that's not lost too. I hear that all the time. I heard it all the time as a principal, and that's just not an acceptable answer. We have to go above and beyond a posting on EdJoin if we want Black and Brown teachers anywhere, but particularly in this county.
Yes, and one of the steps that Marin Promise Partnership has taken in with Canal Alliance, Community Action Marin, and Marin Legal Aid is to submit a call to action to the Board of Supervisors to really provide housing, affordable housing, workforce development housing for our teachers so that we can have a more diverse staff in representing our students and supporting our students. And so that is something that I'm very proud to know that Ann Matheson signed Marin Promise Partnership on, and to know that we also got to work together. We don't live in siloed lives. So other initiatives to support similarly would be a sanctuary city for all, so that people who lived with mixed families can come here, find a place to affordably live and teach our BIPOC students.
So thank you all so much. It is 1:29. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We want to thank our three panelists, Marjorie, Dr. Itoco, and Melissa. Your answers, your time, and your passion has been seen, and we feel it, and we want to be there for you all and for our community. That being said, to our guests, thank you so much. Our next event will be October 14th, so be on the lookout for our Save the Date. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of the day.